Tech mining. Today, I have the privilege and the opportunity to speak to the authors of this book, which came out over 2 decades ago, Dr. Alan Porter and Dr. Scott Cunningham, to review the what has basically happened in the last couple of decades, and to talk a little bit about some of the ideas that were in the tech mining book, to see if things have changed, or to see how much of this continues to be a valuable resource and how one looks at the management of technology. Um, the quantitative indicator-based approach in tech mining has held up well against changes inside technology, science and technology, such as the computers got much faster and the algorithms greatly improved, and the math underlying the algorithms also greatly improved in the last 20 years. Um, but most of that change has been incremental. So, for example, the tech mining talks about PCA, and you know, the discussion over the years was, do we use PCA? Do we use SVMs? Do we use topic modeling? And so all of this stuff was substitutional, a better way of the nugget you were after, the concept you were trying to find, the topic you were trying to find, hasn't really changed as a target. And then the fundamental structure, the SQL versus a data lake. I mean, that whole, do we use Hadoop or do we stick with SQL or something like all of that discussion went on over the years. And so everything has been a new technology comes along, should it be substituted? The basic function hasn't changed in tech mining. So the end goal hasn't really changed. The indicator goal hasn't changed. How you get to that end point may have changed. But generative AI, particularly as instantiated in the last couple of years, looks like something else entirely. Will it have a major impact on tech mining? Will it change our approach and how we look at technology? Is this a huge deal, or is this just another substitution?
I think it's certainly not going away. Generative AI uh, has appealing roles to play in tech mining purposes, which again, it's analyzing emerging technologies to get usable intelligence. But it could be a precarious route as AI is popping up and being used with some misused, I think, going on. Uh, I could imagine we hit something where uh, generative AI contributed substantially to some summation on the status of an emerging technology, and it's wrong. I think we all know that AI makes mistakes, so we really have to pay some serious attention to checking and reviewing and so forth, so we don't get we relied on the AI and we had a horrible blunder with terrible consequences, therefore stop using AI.
I think that we've aspired to take a compositional approach to science and technology from the very beginning. So you can see the great amount of care done in the tech mining book and in the community about getting our queries right. And we see the papers coming out, like, for instance, nanotechnology. I think before we all sighed in exhaustion, that query was 100 terms long or more about just trying to get
Yeah.
to get it. And that was, what is the what is the thing inside nanotechnology? Can we define it so that we can draw the boundaries around it clearly? And we're getting more and more help about that. We see this also in design structure matrices, where you can take a technology and examine the individual parts, roll it up, roll it down, and there's like amazing amounts of help in this. The matrices are there for us to look at. We can find them or define them with the tools that we've got. So the long-standing puzzle of the composition of technology and composition of science is getting clearer and clearer, and we're getting more capable. Now, for my frustration for tech mining is that I wanted for us all to have very acute, compact models of science and technology that were explainable to decision maker. And you named some of the things. Well, why isn't factor analysis doing it? Why isn't cluster analysis doing it? And I think we know the answer now. factors of factors. It's just still factors. You can go 10 factors, you can go 100 factors, you can go 1,000 factors, but they're not they're just adding a little bit more additional slices and not doing anything new. What these models have done is they've compounded them. They've added nonlinearities and they've been able to capture something real about the structure of science. So we have a challenge. We have the question of letting these large language models instruct us about what's going on in science and technology, or decomposing them and querying them. And so I imagine there's going to be some midweight models that do some of the things that tech mining do, but are not so strange, so not so incomprehensible as these large language models. And some of the things that people are producing in the tech mining field have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of parameters. It's not not unimaginable that medium weight things with that number of parameters might give us really good common models of science and technology that we could use. And maybe they're out there. Maybe they're out there behind closed doors somewhere. Someone with enough computational power might be making such models already.
If you were to rewrite this book today, based on your experience over the last couple of decades, is there anything fundamental that either of you two would change?
It's a fresh way to look at things, which I haven't pursued too far. But I would think a promising approach would be for the field, those participating in tech mining, such as Global Tech Mining Conference attendees and so forth, to step back. And I think the big challenge right now is the correct and useful incorporation of AI tools into tech mining. Remember, tech mining was a shorthand that we had some feedback on, some resistance to say, don't try to be cute. Give a good long analysis of this, that, and the other, and so forth for the purpose of blah, blah, blah. But I think some review of what are our purposes and our there varies from an academic or attendee at a GTM conference versus a more practical orientation of an organization, such as a company or a governmental organization, to step back and review those tech mining tools and approaches to see how we could really maximize the available competitive technical intelligence these days.
Riffing off of Alan and agreeing with him, I'd like to see more AI, more open source programming in such a book. There's challenges in writing such a book because it would duplicate some of the existing field, but there's a kind of literacy that needs to happen there. Our community, some of us, it's split. There's people that are way out there really understand how to use these tools, and there's some of us that are just beginning at it. And I wonder if there's a medium weight thing of saying, what do you need to know to get started on that? And I've tried to write a book like that and not entirely succeeded. And some of that stuff is going behind big corporations with massive amounts of computing. So the practical users aren't going to be spending €1 million on a lot of computing time to build these models. They're going to consume the ones that are given to them. So then that says, well, maybe there's another level there of asking the right questions. And that's back to something fundamental about tech mining. What's the right questions that we ought to be asking about these models? Some of it's going to be human and some of it's going to be programming, by which I mean software engineers are always talking about reusability. What are the structures, templates, or queries that we can use to reuse our code again and again? And I think that's still coming true. We're watching people asking the right things of their models, adding something new, producing reproducible templates that are producing actionable intelligence. And back to that one pager, they're kind of like the one pagers, but they're the things that we could ask again and again in repeating context to make the best use of our AI technologies. So a book like that maybe would have these kind of queries or templates that you could prompt whenever addressing a new technology and riff. And also to be skeptical, to be critical. to internally validate the kinds of things that are coming out of the model. Alan talked about a possible lack of confidence in AI created by disastrously poor models. I suppose our users collectively, we need to be vigilant, and we need to know, how would we know? How would this fail before we even begin? What are the tests that would show that this is validated knowledge?
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for your comments. Please, if you haven't taken a look at Tech Money, we suggest you do so. There's an awful lot of wisdom in this book from these two gentlemen, and still valid today, and I think will continue to be valid long in the future. Thank you.